Alrighty, folks. Let's go over what happened today with Trading Paints. To be honest with you guys, I don't know when it was that they actually updated their terms of service policy or their guidelines or what have you on their website, but I went on their site and I verified, and I'll actually go ahead and pull that up while I'm doing this video because I think it's important to be specific when we're talking about these things. But basically what they said is they issued a statement today on Twitter that they said was reiterating policy and guidelines that already existed, banning political paint schemes, which, for any of you who follow this channel, as you know, I definitely run a political paint scheme. I wouldn't try to get around that, and there's no getting around that. I run a paint scheme that endorses a political candidate, period, plain and simple. I don't agree that there is a moral equivalence between the political candidate I endorse and the political views that others endorse, but that does start getting into the nitty-gritty of actually delving into the details of what different political positions are, which Trading Paints being a platform that is simply about allowing artists to share their work, they're not trying to get into the details of that discussion. I do think that they had a clause already that would allow them to ban the LGB coin stuff, but they didn't feel they didn't want to go that route, and I can sort of understand why. But let's take a look at what their actual policy is here, which is right here. And I'm going to go, so this is their community guidelines. It's on their site. There's a link to it in the guidelines down in the footer of the web page, which can be kind of hard to get to, particularly on mobile if you're viewing the schemes. But this isn't about website UI design. So they've got a long list of do's and then some don'ts. And it's the don't section that matters. Don't load up anything that you don't have permission to use, which is a good rule of thumb. Don't post submissions that do not contain accurate iRacing screenshots. So that's fine. Don't post adult-themed content. Makes sense. So here are the two I'm going to cover. Don't post political content. Don't post content that endorses or advertises for or against a political candidate, which is what my Cori Bush for Congress paint scheme indisputably does, figure, or party. The nature of political content is not something we believe should be part of the Trading Paints experience. So, again, even while I disagree with them effectively both sidesing this argument and just doing a blanket ban, this is their right as the owner of this platform to make this statement. I want to make that clear. They wrote the code. They have created the service that allows us to, in iRacing, create our own paints with more freedom and flexibility than what the iRacing internal paint editor allows you to do, which only has a certain handful of different paint schemes that you can select, and then you can change the colors on up to 3 color options, and you can pick from the handful of sponsors that they have available that are placed specifically in the places that they auto place it. If you want to do more than that with your paints, and you actually want other people that you're racing with to be able to see your paint scheme, then you need the Trading Paint service. That is the only way that you can put up a paint that is truly custom into iRacing and allow people to see that. The people who own and operate Trading Paints have created all of that code. They have provided the service. So I am of the belief, even if I disagree with the ways in which they manage that service, and if it's not the way that I would manage the service, I do think and believe that they have the right to regulate the service and forum that they have created as they see fit. So they're totally fine in that regard with saying this, with making the statement that the nature of political content is not something we believe should be part of the Trading Paints experience. Of course, content featuring causes promoting human and civil rights, which are issues that are not political, is allowed. So what does that mean? That means that yes, Black Lives Matter, which promotes human rights and civil rights, LGBTQ pride schemes, which promote human rights and civil rights, those are allowed. Those are not inherently political in nature. They are not endorsements of a particular political candidate, political figure, or political party. So for those of you who are a little bit thick, who are pretending like you don't understand the difference between those two concepts, it's stated very clearly here in the guidelines. So if you don't understand that, or if you're just pretending that you don't understand that because you think that it's fun to make bad faith arguments, I've really got nothing for you. You're free to go elsewhere. Folks like that are just simply not worth engaging with because they're not interested in making valid points. They're simply there to cause problems. Next clause, and this is one where I feel like they actually could have, if they wanted to, get rid of the Let's Go Brandon stuff without having to make an additional ban about not posting political content. Because if I'm being honest, those folks are just being jerks at the end of the day. They know it. They know what they're doing. They might pretend like that's not what they're doing because, again, they're interested in making bad faith arguments, but that's absolutely what they're doing. Don't be a jerk. Don't use Trading Paints to harass people. At the end of the day, the entire Let's Go Brandon thing is ultimately a harassment of the NBC reporter who incorrectly claimed that the F Joe Biden chant was a Let's Go Brandon chant. So yes, the entire Let's Go Brandon campaign is ultimately a harassment of that NBC reporter who, Kelly Stavist, a name I was blanking on for a second, but yes, this is ultimately her, in part, a harassment campaign of that person. Threaten or abuse anyone. Don't post spam messages. Come on. Or comments. If you feel you must share feedback, keep it positive and constructive. So I would argue, again, that while my Cori Bush for Congress car has always been inherently political, and I'm not going to dance around that one bit, there would be no point. I am endorsing a political candidate who I believe in. I do think that my endorsement of her has always been in a positive and constructive sense. Cori is one of the few politicians who I actually agree with her on every single position that she holds publicly. And I think that she is an inherently good person who takes the burden and responsibility of her office seriously, as all public figures should. And she does not compromise her integrity on behalf of special interests who donate to her campaign. So, I do think, again, that anything that they are trying to exclude with the blanket ban on political content, they could have excluded with this clause, which I do think is very well written. Continuing it to the end. Don't use Trading Paints to promote disinformation. So here you have covered all of the anti-vax nonsense, and if anyone wants to try to post stuff about COVID being a hoax, that can be banned with this without having to try to claim that it's inherently political, which means that you can still allow the promotion of human and civil rights, which are not inherently or perhaps exclusively political. There's a political element to those causes for sure. But the only reason, remember, that there is a political element is that because there are people arguing the opposite position, that people should not have equal rights and should be excluded from certain rights, or it's fine to treat them in an unequal manner because of their race, gender, sexual orientation or sexual preferences. So issues that shouldn't be political become political when political figures and political activists take up the opposing position that no, these people should not have the same rights as everyone else. So that's how they become political, but it's not something that's inherently political, and it's not something that is exclusively political, because you can make the statement that Black Lives Matter, for example, or that that you are proud of your identity as someone who is lesbian, gay, queer, bi, trans, or any other identity group, without having that be an inherently political statement. There are political parties who take on those causes on behalf of those people and advocate for their rights, but that does not make that an inherently political thing or an exclusively political thing, because there are aspects to those movements that are separate from political campaigns. Whereas, again, my endorsement of Cori Bush and her political campaign was 100% political. As are statements, endorsing Donald Trump for 2020, 2024, what have you. So that's the difference there. Again, positive and constructive. Don't use trading pains to promote disinformation. Hate speech or hate symbols in any form are not allowed anywhere. So I think it's a stretch it would be a stretch to claim that the LGB coin stuff fit under hate speech or hate symbols. Now, again, it's a stretch right now. It could definitely turn into that. Anything that particularly hate symbols. Hate symbols don't start out as hate symbols necessarily. The swastika didn't start out as a hate symbol. That was co-opted by a hate group, the Nazi Party of Germany, and turned into a hate symbol through their actions and misuse of it. It now means something different than it did before the 1930s. That's just one example. I know it's always easiest to go to the Nazis, but again, it's a very stark example just to illustrate certain specific points. And that's just to say that something that is not a hate symbol today could become a hate symbol tomorrow if a hate group decides to take on that symbol as part of their identity, commit heinous acts under the banner of that symbol. It will forever taint that symbol. It's horrible when that happens. It stinks. But honestly, the loss of the use of that symbol in polite public discourse is the least of the casualties from the acts of hate groups when they do things like that. So, in conclusion, what's changing for me? To wrap up this particular video, which I'm sure will be will probably be some follow-up videos. Potentially, there will definitely be some follow-up discussion had. It's a bit of an end of an era, and this is kind of hard for me, but this marks the end of me running the Cori Bush for Congress car, which I've been running for 3 years or more, I think, and the end of me running cars on iRacing that specifically endorse political candidates, unless Trading Paints decides to clarify or adjust what their terms of service are. I don't think it's right for me to use someone else's service in a way that they have expressly defined as being misuse of their platform. And had I known that they had this ban in place earlier, I probably would have stopped running it at an earlier date. Today was the first day that I had heard about this. They really hadn't made much noise about it, to my knowledge, in the past. So, again, had I known that they had a very explicit ban on political content, and specifically not posting content that endorses or advertise for or against a political candidate, figure, or party, I wouldn't have run it. Now, it could be interpreted as, because they're saying don't post content, that they're talking about public postings in the public showroom and not about private paint schemes, which all of my Cori Bush cars were. I went back through my showroom and I had two Bernie Sanders paint schemes that I had done in 2016 that are late 2015, early 2016 that I had posted that were available for public in the showroom. I have delisted those. So if they decide to come out with a clarification and say, hey, you're free to use the service to run privately any scheme that you want, but please don't post it publicly in the showroom, that will change things, and I may bring back the Cori Bush sponsorship or other political campaigns that I decide to get behind and want to publicly promote and endorse on my car at that time. But for now, I'm going to respect the wishes of Trading Paints as I continue to use their service. I had thought about potentially a couple of options. One would have been just running the paint scheme from a local file on my computer. I don't think that there's much point to that, because the whole concept of running a car in a virtual race is the idea that that car is the same car that everyone else in that race is seeing. So running it outside of Trading Paints locally so that you guys who watch my channel can see it, but no one in the race sees the same car, I didn't see a lot of point to trying to do it that way. The other option would have been to just stop running Trading Paints at all as a protest. And I could have done that and just gone back to running the normal iRacing stuff. But honestly, I don't think that that would be that's the best way to approach this. Cori Bush won her race. She is now in Congress. That's fantastic. So in some respect, it's mission accomplished. I continued running the paint scheme because I wanted to make it clear that I still support her, especially as she's been taking heat now that she's in a more prominent position. And folks who had really didn't know her before are starting to understand that where she stands on things, the way where she disagrees with them on, and they're taking some cheap shots at her. So yeah, I felt like I wanted to stand with her through her first year in Congress, which has been, you know, an honor. It's always been an honor to run her name on my car. So going forward, again, as it says in the guidelines for Trading Paints, content featuring causes promoting human and civil rights, which are issues that are not particularly allowed, which means that I can continue to run paint schemes that support and advocate for the same issues and causes that are important to me, that motivated me to support Cori Bush with the fervor that I do, without having to specifically run her name on my car. I can use those issues as a jumping off point to start discussions about why I think, hey, here's one example of a politician that's in DC that is actually fighting for these causes that I believe in. So you may see, so some of my cars will transition to that. The Anykey.org affiliation that I have is in direct alignment with all of those things. It's not an inherently political cause. That's absolutely something that will probably be featured on my cars going forward more prominently. I'll also likely start featuring some local organizations and charities that I feel like are doing good work in the St. Louis area, and potentially some that are more national or global that I feel are doing good work and good to highlight. When I put stuff on my car, I always try to make sure that I, at the very least, have the express permission, and make sure that the person who owns that intellectual property is aware that I'm running their logo on my car. So I like making those personal relationships a part of the whole deal. So it is in a sense the end of an era. Like I said, I've been running the Corey Bush car for over 3 years. I think that the first win that I got in it was that 2018 win at Richmond, where I stayed out on old tires, forgot to put the car in second gear, restarted in fourth gear, and still won on the last lap shootout. Feels like forever ago that happened. I have gotten the vast majority of my wins on iRacing running Corey Bush cars. So it does sting a little bit that I won't be able to do that. But again, I understand why Trading Paints doesn't want to make their entire website about taking on this fight. And I'm going to respect their wishes with how I use the service that they've created. So that's going to conclude the video. There's probably a lot more that could be said, and there's a lot more that will be said in the coming hours, days, weeks, and months, I'm sure, about this, because this is going to be an ongoing discussion, I'm sure. But that's where I'm going to tie off this video. Thank you for getting to the end of it. That did go a little bit longer than I planned on. I'm going to go run some practice, and I'll see you guys out on track and in some future videos. Thank you very much for watching. If you like my stuff, please click the like button, click subscribe, head over to twitch.tv/John_A_Theodore, and give me a follow. See you guys later. Peace.